Hello, everyone. I thought I would do a video reviewing the study questions for the readings that will be on the third exam. So this video might go a little long because I want to do it all at once. This is the reading 20. It's the Declaration of Independence. Number one, what does it mean for something to be self-evident? That's a good thing to know. I'm a philosophy teacher in my real life, so this is the kind of thing that I deal with a lot because philosophers like to talk about self-evident first principles. If something is self-evident, it is obviously true. That is, it, for one reason or another, is true manifestly, so that things that are self-evident don't need to be proved. So in the Declaration of Independence, when it starts out with that famous line that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, etc., the writer of that and the people who signed it said these things are obviously true. They don't need proof because any reasonable person would agree to them. Number two, do you think that the things that are claimed to be self-evident here actually are self-evident? Why not? That's my philosophy teacher's side coming out too, because the claim that something is self-evident, for instance, that all men and all human beings, we really should say, I think, to update the language, are created equal and are endowed with certain rights that are inalienable, that is, cannot be ever lost or given away in any way. Is that actually true? Something I think all of us have to decide for ourselves. Number three, the text claims that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. What would Hobbes think of this claim? He'd reject it, of course. He's very explicit in Leviathan that once you give over your natural liberty and voluntarily agree, consent to enter into a state of civil society, you can't leave it. And the people cannot revolt and destroy it. You just have to live with it. And that's a big issue. What would Locke think of it? Locke would agree. Of course he would. And this is one of the ways in which Locke was just such a great influence on American politics. In the last paragraph, the colonies assert their independence from Great Britain. On what authority do they make this assertion? I have to look that up. I forget why I asked that question. You have to give me a moment. So I did look it up. You'll have to forgive me. It's right there at the end. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, by which they mean God, for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, etc. Well, the authority is the authority of the people. And here, I think we go back to probably all three of the authors of the second part of the course, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, who I think all of them would agree that ultimately the source of sovereignty, that is, the authority to institute government and what gives government its legitimacy, is the people, the individuals who agree to be governed. So in making their appeal, saying, well, who gives us the right to make this assertion in this Declaration of Independence? It's the people, because true political sovereignty doesn't rest in a monarchy or an aristocracy. It resides in all of the individuals in a society. So it's actually a pretty key issue and something incredibly important modern idea. So taking a look at the reading 21 review questions, this is for Alexander Hamilton's Federalist, the first Federalist paper, Federalist number 1. In his opening paragraph, Hamilton says that it is up to the people of America to decide for the world an important question. What is that question? Well, to paraphrase, the question is whether governments can be instituted, that is, begun, as a result of reflection and choice, which is what he's proposing. That is, governments begun and given a certain structure as a result of rational deliberation, free choice, discussion, or whether governments are always instituted, I think he says, by accident and force, which would be pretty much the Machiavelli idea, I think. So it's an incredibly important question. I think it's the question. I think it's kind of the reason to read Federalist #1, to see what he's engaged in and what he's proposing, is that, can we actually pull this off? Can the states actually form a federal government, a unified government, and do that as a result of their free deliberation, thinking about what institutions would be best, what laws, what principles, what constitution would be best, rather than things happening as they usually happen, where people just sort of drift into certain forms of government. So it's a pretty important question. Number 2, Hamilton claims that, quote, upon many occasions, we see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude to society. What lesson does he think this should teach us? Well, what he says is it should teach us to moderate our opinions about whether we think we're always right, because it's a pretty amazing little passage where he says, a lot of people are against this Constitution for selfish and conniving reasons. But a lot of people are against it who are just plain wrong, and they're not people who have ulterior motives. They just don't understand what they're doing, and they're on the wrong side, but they don't know it. So the lesson is, I think, which is a great lesson, is it applies to everybody, that you're a person of good faith, and if you really have a very strong position on a particular question, especially a political question, you always have to keep in mind the possibility that you're wrong. You're a good person, you're doing things in good faith, but you could rethink this thing. A pretty amazing thing to say. Number 3, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. What is Hamilton suggesting by this? You should really look up that word demagogue, because it's very timely. Trump is a demagogue. There's no question about it. I mean, somebody who is just appeals to the people and basically will give them whatever they want, or his supporters whatever they want, including, subverting the constitutional process of electing a president. I mean, a demagogue is literally a leader of the people. It's an old Greek word. And somebody who's a populist, and somebody who's democratic, and somebody who wants to do what the people want to do. And so to be a demagogue, I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing, is something that's in question. People have always kind of said it's a bad thing, the classical sources, because demagogues appeal to people's worst instincts, is the idea. But the idea is you start out being a leader of the people, saying, well, the people need to be free, the people need this or that, but you end up being a tyrant. You end up being somebody who takes away people's freedom. And that was always the danger of any demagogue, is that you start out saying, yeah, everything's for the people and give me power so I can do what you need me to do. And then you end up just oppressing them at the end. This is the idea. Very timely idea. Number 4, Hamilton is advocating for the states to adopt a federal constitution, thereby creating a strong central government in America. Looking back on this from our vantage point, was he right? Why or why not? That's really up to you to decide, but it's an important question. I think that 30, 40, 50 years ago, if I'd asked this question to people, because of course he was right. We need a federal constitution. We need But given how American politics has gone the past 10 or 20 years, maybe it's a question about whether it's really worth it. I mean, I just think it's an open question. So obviously there's no right or wrong answer there. Now looking at the reading 22 review questions, this is for the Constitution of the United States. First, what is a constitution? I always ask that question because growing up and, probably into my teenage years, I thought there was only one constitution, and it was the United States Constitution. I didn't realize that, a constitution is a general idea, that that the British have a constitution, the city of Athens had a constitution, so what is a constitution? Well, the first thing is that it doesn't even have to be written down. The British have a constitution which relies upon tradition and a common understanding, and they don't have a document like the Americans do. A constitution is a basic idea of how power is distributed within a society, within the government of a society, what the powers of government are, what their limits are, how they're divided up, and how laws are made, and the powers of each of the offices. So a constitution is a set of ideas or rules for how political power is actually distributed within a society. That's what a constitution is. And the American Constitution is just one of them. Number two, the preamble, the we the people part, indicates what this document is meant to achieve. In your own words, what does it say? Well, let's take a look. We the people of the United States, in order to form, okay, so here we go. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution. Well, I mean, there are a lot of aims there. To establish justice, and that would mean, that would mean courts and people getting a fair treatment, and ensure domestic tranquility so that there are no uprisings or there are no people trying to achieve power. People storming the Capitol, trying to stop, the selection of the president, something like that. Who knew? Provide for the common defense so that we have a military and we can defend ourselves if we're attacked by another country. Promote the general welfare. That's interesting. I mean, welfare is just well-being. Just make life good. Very Hobbesian, right? And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So there's very different aims here: to make us more prosperous, to establish justice, to make us more secure, and to make us more free. I wonder if any document can really do all of that. Wow. It's pretty amazing taking a look at it. The ambition and the breadth of the claims. Excuse me. Number three, the first 10 amendments to this Constitution are commonly known as the Bill of Rights. That's true. Do you think they actually cover the most important rights that an individual should have? Why or why not? Well, that's, of course, an open-ended question. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from things like government overreach, like unwarranted search and seizures, freedom from cruel and unusual punishments, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, there's more than 10 amendments to the Constitution, and some of them are purely kind of procedural, but some of them have to do with rights, right? So whether they actually cover the first 10 actually cover all the most important rights, I think, how could they? Because our ideas change and circumstances change. So rights that were not secured, especially for some people, women, African Americans, they had to add to it. Otherwise, it would be incomplete. So I mean, it's an open-ended question, but I don't know how you could say that the first 10 covered everything completely. I mean, maybe the most important things, but they had to be extended. So yeah, history.